Meeting for July 27th, 2022 to order. Jesse, if you could please read the instructions for us.
All right, well, welcome to our virtual meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link and calling the number on your original email. To members and city staff, members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you're speaking. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions. Staff click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on committee members in the order in which their hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the board, please send it to the email listed in today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Jesse. Aiden, if you could call the roll, please.
Charles Miazzi. Don't see it. Barbara Harrington McKinney. I don't see it. Chris McCahill.
Here.
Ann Kovich.
Here.
Denise Jeffs.
Here.
Robbie Weber.
Here.
Patricia Bennett is excused. Bridget Brown.
I know she said she had to leave early, Aiden, but I would. Oh, there she is.
Yeah,
Hi,
Bridget,
again here.
Yeah.
Bill Bremer.
Here.
Harold Cleans is excused. And Darren Wozniewski.
Present.
Thanks.
So we're missing 4 right now.
Okay. All right. So, Darren, you're able to make motions and vote this evening because Harold is gone and we have more than one member gone as well. So, everybody have an opportunity to look at the minutes from the last meeting. Is there a motion to approve? Chris?
Yep, move approval of the minutes.
Robbie?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing no hands, we'll assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, the motion is carried. Are there any public comments this evening, Amy?
There are none.
Okay. Any disclosures or recusals this evening? Robbie?
I am on the board of directors of Madison Bikes. We are not on any of the grants. However, we might at some point be helping on a volunteer basis with either the Safe Routes to School or the walking school bus. We don't have any plans at the moment, and we wouldn't be paid anyway. But I just wanted to disclose that.
Sure. Well, we'll record that as a disclosure. So that would be on items 3 and 5, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. But that certainly wouldn't disqualify you from voting. It's just a disclosure. Great. Any other disclosures or recusals? And I always appreciate how cautious everybody is. Great to make those disclosures. Okay, next we have our consent agenda. Items number 2 and 3 are currently proposed for the consent agenda. Any items where members of the public have registered to speak would automatically be separated. Aiden, do we have any, either item 2 or 3 where anybody from the public has registered to speak?
We do not.
Okay. Are there any of the proposed items for the consent agenda that anybody would wish to be separated, Bill?
I guess I have questions on how each of them are treated, so I guess that takes it out of the consent agenda. Because I have questions about each of them.
Okay. That's just fine. So that's both on 2 and 3. We can just handle
Yep.
them separately.
Okay.
Then, okay. All right. So let's start with item 2 then, which relates to the Railroad Crossing Elimination Program safety improvements. So who from, do we want to just jump into questions rather than having a
Sure.
Yeah, why? I think the resolution is pretty straightforward. So why don't we just jump into questions or comments? So, Bill, I know you have some, so go ahead.
Yeah, my question relates to the resolutions like this, and these happen quite frequently. So I did some research and looked up the program of which this resolution says that the city is interested in applying for. But when we approve these kinds of resolutions, they don't have any specific project in mind, or at this, maybe the city staff does, but they're not included in the resolution. So after like this one, I think the due date for applying for the grant is in October. So when a specific project is envisioned or is being requested by the city, that will go in as part of the grant request. Is that correct?
So Yang, can you help with that? Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Anne. And thank you, Bill, for that great question. We face very tight deadlines, for these grant applications. For this specifically for this one, if I remember correct, the due date is October 4th. I think I'm correct on that. Staff actually are developing, project concepts. We've been working with city engineering on that, and now we're looking at 3 corridors, 3 railroad corridors. So we look at the accident histories on these railroads, where the federal government should have a number for each crossing and have all the records with it. So we're going through that and trying to find out the best ones to apply. But right now we're looking at tentatively looking at 3 corridors. We also need to reach out to the railroad companies on this, because actually, for much of the improvements we do, they actually own the improvements. However, though, they are not a qualified eligible recipients of the funds, so they cannot apply. The city can apply, but we need to get their support. So I've been working on that. As you know, that may be uncertainty as well. Even though it's kind of hard to imagine, why someone would turn down, safety money. But you never know. Because those factors, and also because the potential that when we start discussing detailed projects with this resolution, we can significantly slow down the process. As we may have public come in telling us, why not improve the crossing that I'm using instead of proving other crossings. So I think to avoid that, because uncertainties, and to avoid dragging the timeline that may lead us to actually miss the timeline, we're not going to include the project list, candidate list with the with the resolution when it's headed to a council. But we're definitely working on detailed projects kind of behind the scene. I think it's possible for us to find a way maybe to share that with the commission at some point if the commission is interested. But we want also be mindful that these things have a very tight timeline. There's a lot of work to do. We really cannot afford to delay the process. So hopefully that answers the question.
I appreciate that timeliness is necessary when they have hard deadlines to meet by funding agencies like FRA, for instance, in this example. So, but I guess when the staff and will the projects be actually then the grant projects go before the council then, before it's submitted as a final step before it's actually submitted to the FRA?
Another good question. No, we're not going to bring the detailed project list or candidate list to the council because those are candidates, and I think even after the process, even if I got a grant, those lists may change. But I think there's going to be a process if we got a grant.
But
I think definitely go through.
When you make the grant request, you have to have specific locations, don't you?
Yes.
To improve your chances of getting the grant.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's desirable to have those detailed plans.
Right. Right. And what improvements you want to make and so forth. Right.
Yeah. Location.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Without that, I don't think we're going to be competitive at all. So we're going to that to FRA with application. But
so then if the city receives the grant, then at that time, then you'll come back to the commission, or in this project specific would go to the planning and policy board, right? Transportation probably would be there.
I don't think it would, Yang, would it? The council is approving the resolution, so there's no requirement that the specific projects come back. Would that be correct?
That is correct. Yeah, but I think realistically, we probably want these bodies' input on those detailed projects as we go through the design process, and we need a council to, prove things such as plans and specs. And for this case, actually, maybe railroad is kind of special, and they only use their own contractors. So we may have to find a way to make it work. So I mean, even if we got a grant, there's gonna be challenges ahead of us. So yeah. So but normally, for other grant programs, I think typically we will probably bring some projects to TC when we need input, and probably go through a public engagement process as well for those design components. And we may be able to change some of the projects on the candidate list. But right now, we just don't have time to do that. If we do that, we'll probably look at the because everyone has different ideas on what a project should be, and we think it's not possible for us to put together application if we do that at this point.
So Yang, the projects would likely come to TC and then probably Board of Public Works with the plans and specs and to the council, similar to our other public works projects?
That is correct. Yeah, that's very likely.
Does that help, Bill?
Yep, sure does. I get a much better, this is, I found this to be a very interesting program because it's brand new at the federal level rather than the money coming through WISTOT. So
yeah,
for the rail crossings. Yeah. So it's, did anybody from your staff, Yang, sit in on the webinar that FRA had?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
A few of us.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's ahead of you as far as what you have to do to get the grant request in. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. We also talk to cities lobbyists in Washington. Getting some directions and how guidance from them as well. Yeah. We're doing a lot of kind of work, kind of researching it and making sure that we stay competitive.
Yeah, okay. And even
and
if let's say Wisconsin, Madison is selected, you'll have to have some involvement with the railroad commissioner, won't you, on this grant?
yes, we do. Yeah, and especially with the railroad companies.
Yeah.
We'll start engaging them very soon.
Okay,
after
good.
we
Good.
Work on some separate.
Okay, I don't want to delay any further, but I was just so this is not unusual in these kinds of resolutions, including for number 3 of we're not identifying any specific projects during approval of these kinds of resolutions. We're just
Right now, correct.
Right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to go ahead and staff will put in the best decision as far as chances of getting the grant and what you think is the best project for the city for all of these kinds of grant requests where you have tight deadlines.
That is correct. Yeah, but we
Yeah,
use
okay.
we'll use guidance out there that from previous city policies. Plans,
Sure, and other
in accordance with something that's approved by the city. Actually, we're going to talk a lot more about this as we talk about the item 4, the Safe Streets.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for answering
thank
those
you.
questions.
Yeah,
Thanks.
great questions. And also pointed out that the name of the grant is misleading on this.
Yeah,
one.
it is. It
says
is.
railroad crossing elimination. We have no intent to eliminate those crossings.
But it is eligible. It is eligible. And
that's
but when I saw the program, I thought, is this something that it's already a different program administered by WISDOT, and it's not. So. Yeah.
Okay. Is that all you had then, Bill?
Yep, sure is. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Bridget, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is a great opportunity for the city, and I would like to move approval.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, Bridget, your hand is still up. Did you want to comment on your motion or speak to your motion? No? Okay. All right, we'll assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain or have a roll call vote. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, the motion is carried. So let's move on to item 3. This is the Safe Routes to School grant. Questions or comments on this one? Bill, did you have questions? You asked that it be separated out?
It's just, I just wanted to, the same kind of general questions. And I think I got that answered in the previous discussion.
Okay, so Yang, the plan would be the same here, that you would pick out candidate projects, and then once, if the grants are obtained, excuse me, you would likely bring them to the Transportation Commission and on to Board of Public Works for plans and specs. Or Renee, go ahead.
I can jump in on this one. So this one's a little bit different. This is actually just to create Safe Routes to School plans. So it would be kind of an overarching framework for the Safe Routes to School program in Madison. And then looking for recommendations both in places where we currently have hazardous bus situations. So people are getting bused, not because of the distance they live, but because of it's been deemed as a hazardous, like street crossing or something. So recommendations for improvements, as well as doing some in-depth school planning. So you would like to hear more about this in the future, and the work that we do would lead to additional grant applications, new Safe Streets Madison projects, but this is really just for doing that sort of groundwork of doing some planning around Safe Routes to School.
Okay, great. Any other discussion or questions of staff? Is there a motion to approve this one, Bill?
I'll make a motion for approval
Chris?
of this
Second.
resolution.
Is that a second, Chris? Okay, thanks. Is there any further discussion? Okay, we'll assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing no hands, the motion is carried. So we'll move on to item 4. So Yang, did you want to start out with a little bit of a recap on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I will talk about some of the kind of general information about the grant and our considerations. And actually, Renee will talk a little bit about the candidate project list that we're working on. Kind of that will also kind of help answer kind of Bill's question a little bit further. On this grant. This is for a new program as well that as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. So the Safe Streets and Roads for All program will support implementation of activities that are included in an approved Vision Zero action plan. In addition to, a small amount of money will be for, the planning, the plans. The majority of the funds will be for implementation of those approved action plan. So for this cycle, there's going to be $1 billion available, for the cities and other organizations to compete for. And it really focuses on preventing roadway death and serious injuries. This is a brand new program, so it's kind of hard to estimate our chances, but we believe we are well positioned for it. Our Vision Zero work has been recognized by U.S. DOT, by the Deputy Secretary, when they announced their kind of national, safety initiative. Our work has been featured by the National League of Cities. And we're invited to speak at the upcoming NACTO conference in Boston in September. So we're definitely getting noticed, and people know that they were serious about this. We also are only city in Wisconsin that has the one Vision Zero action plan adopted. That, and not so many in the country as well. So which will give us, I think, a big advantage, for the first cycle, the first year. I think right now, many communities are actually focusing on developing a plan so that they can qualify for, to apply for the implementation grant in future years. But the first year, we feel like we have a huge advantage, because of a good work in the past. So I really have to thank everyone here as well, for working with us in the last 2 years on this. So really set us up for for this grant opportunity. So we are developing a $20 million application for this round. So that's a quite ambitious goal, and I think that's the largest safety grant we ever applied. And the 2023 traffic engineering budget request include a required 20% local match. So that's been taken care of. Of course, has a contingent on the city actually getting the grant or part of the grant. And as we discussed, it's very desirable to have a well thought out candidate project list, kind of help describing type of projects that we want to implement in other locations, so we can stay more competitive for the program. So we are doing that, trying to maximize our chances of being awarded a grant. So Vision Zero staff team is dedicating significant amount of time in creating a candidate project list, following the guidance of the our Vision Zero action plan, which was adopted by the council. So really going through those actions that we said we're going to do and developing projects based on that. We also want to put equity at the front center of the decision-making process, as well as use the Vision Zero high injury network to choose the streets and intersections where we experience high speeds, the fatalities, and serious injuries. And I think one thing that we really feel grateful, for this body is that Safe Streets Medicine process. Actually, it's kind of quite handy for us to use that, borrow that, use it for this process as well. So we're going to use that same process to help us prioritize the project. We feel like we will come up with a pretty good list of candidate projects that really reflects all the priorities and the goals that the city has identified. Even though we're not going to show the public the detailed list at this point, just to make sure that we can catch a deadline. And I will turn over to Renee to talk more about the project list, as she is one of the person spending a lot of time on the list, really doing a lot of good work there. When we are done with the project list, we're going to add it as appendix to the vision direction plan, so that it's kind of well documented. Renee?
Sure. So I think Yang went over quite a bit of it. And of course, this also is a brand new program for the US DOT. So obviously, they have a lot of emphasis really on finding communities that are ready to implement actions that will prevent serious and fatal crashes. So they do have a pretty extensive application because obviously they really want to make sure that this is a program that lasts. And it's actually due on September 15th. So as you can imagine, we're really trying to work through a lot of analysis that fits with the goals of the program to make sure that we have the most competitive project possible, because this is such an amazing opportunity to really accelerate our Vision Zero work. You've seen our Safe Streets Madison project list. Last time you saw it, it was around 300 projects. We're getting pretty close to 400 now, and growing all the time because people are super interested in this issue of safety. So this, is going to really focus on those things that you see in the action plan, especially those things that are that are listed as within 5 years, right? Because those are things that we didn't necessarily have city budget for, that we know are important, that we know we want to accelerate. So that's a kind of starting point for us. As Yang mentioned, the Safe Streets Madison prioritization process works really perfectly for this program. Another thing, that the US DOT is really invested in and looks at with projects is this idea of complete streets. And, obviously those ped gaps and bike gaps that we look at in Safe Streets Madison are things that are very important and that they really put an emphasis on as well. So what we've been doing is, looking at that Safe Streets Madison list, particularly for those projects that we know are bigger ticket than what our program can do. US DOT does say that this is, small improvements, but the US DOT's idea of small and Safe Streets Madison idea of small is pretty different. So, these are definitely a little bit bigger things than what we can normally do with that program. So finding those areas where we need to make bigger changes. Really looking at our high injury network. Luckily, we've already done some of that work on equity analysis and looking at some of our sort of environmental justice areas and the high injury network, but also looking at, say, our tier 1 pedestrian sidewalk gaps that are in the Imagine Madison plan, and which ones of those are on the high injury network, where those higher stress bike routes that are critical connections, and finding those as well. So I think also looking, we just did a transit update. So we're really trying to spend a little bit of time looking at those new transit routes and looking at safety issues that we would have along those so that we can get those programs as fast as possible. So really, those are kind of the things that we're trying to analyze, and then kind of using that framework that you guys all worked on developing for Safe Streets Madison. And, the US DOT says over and over, we want to see underserved populations equity. So really trying to take a deeper dive into that. They do use that pretty broadly. So definitely that racial equity, income, but also accessibility for people with disabilities, and making sure that you're looking at things that are going to improve safety outcomes for populations, for youth as well, seniors, right? Looking at those populations and trying to ensure that you're really thinking about serving the entire community with the projects that you're bringing forward. It's kind of unique that you can only put in one application, but it can be very large. So you can't put in more than one. So you have to really be strategic. They want to see that you can realistically do the things that you're saying, because you have 5 years to accomplish all of this. So there is a level of project readiness that we need to consider as well, and be realistic, especially since, you know, they want these first ones to really showcase what this program can do. So really just being realistic. They're like, just be realistic with yourselves. Some of the projects that you put in can be super specific, but there's some room to say that you're going to do some more analysis, and that it's going to be general types of improvements that are in your action plan. So kind of a mix. It's a little unusual in that sense. Usually you're super like, we're applying for this one thing, then another application for this thing, but this is one really big sort of transformational project, I would say. Yeah, so it's definitely going to be a mix of what we would consider larger projects, and, you know, some more medium-sized things that you can do on a wider basis, because that's something that they emphasize as well. But with that, I guess we can take questions.
Questions or comments for staff? Well, everybody's thinking about that. Did we come up with our name of Safe Streets first, or did they come up with Safe Streets first?
Well, we launched ours first, so
All right.
we didn't trademark.
That's okay. Hey, they already know we're on the same path, right? Yeah. So comments or questions? It's a hugely wonderful opportunity, no question about it. Denise, go ahead.
Yeah, no questions. I'm just excited and really appreciate hearing, Renee, all the criteria that you're looking at, a lot of DEI stuff, as well as our Safe Streets and High Injury Network, and also really appreciate hearing the things that they're looking for, that they really feel on target. So I'm excited and hopeful.
Staff Jennifer Schiller has joined the meeting. No alert.
Okay, other comments or questions? So I assume this would follow that same path. There'd be a candidate list that would eventually go with the grant application, and then it would the projects would likely come back to the Transportation Commission and likely on to Board of Public Works and Council.
Yeah.
Yes. I would say probably the majority of projects. If we were able to fit in some really small projects, that's not controversial. Maybe we'll not, come to the commission.
Sure.
But second projects, we will.
Sure. Yep. For sure. Yep.
And most of the projects will have to be contracted out because we're already kind of beyond our capacity right now. For existing staff to handle existing amount of projects. So we'll be we'll probably have to go through, all of them go through Board of Public Works as well because of the Public Works contract.
Sure.
And also let you know that we will, hopefully with the grant, we'll be able to get some kind of staff resource be paid for a grant to help manage some of the projects as well.
Good.
And the only other thing I would mention is you probably see that Safe Streets Madison list, hopefully getting some things that would come off it, because they could go on to this, and we would be able to use that for some, just continuing to expand the work that we're doing.
Yeah, great way to leverage it for sure. Bill, go ahead.
Thanks. And thanks for explaining Ying and Renee. I as I've read as a result of these being on the agenda, I've read more in depth into the federal law, that this is a significant change over past transportation legislation, in the sense that the money is going from Washington directly to the organization, to the governmental unit that's going to do the project. Many times in the past, there was an intermediary stop, and that was at the state level. And I think, hopefully, I think, I don't know what went on, what I would be very interested in knowing what went on if Tom Lynch or others that, involved in pushing Congress to make that change, so that, I don't want to say leaves the states out, but the states are not necessarily as interested in these kinds of projects as the governmental agencies, the local government agencies and tribal agencies and so forth, as some of the state DOTs are. So I guess I applaud whoever thought that this is. I think we do want to make sure we do a good job with these too, so that these kinds of programs continue in the future, so that the funds get moved out to the agencies that are actually going to do the project, and not have to wait for state legislation, let's say, for a DOT or something to administer it. So that's got to be significant, and that's very important. So I'm very pleased. I think Madison is in good shape to take advantage of this, and applaud you guys work for doing this. And I think that's bodes well. I hope you get the whole grant, the max. I think it's 20 million the max, right?
Mhm.
They say that you can apply for a little bit more than that, but they don't
Okay.
like to say there is a maximum, but
Okay, so this one
it's
does
getting-
not have a max in it, but
they've
like some of the other programs do.
suggested that maybe a little more than that, but
Yeah.
They have a max for each state. So I believe. Each
Oh,
state
that's right. Yeah, okay, so it's a
allocated
max per state.
15%, 15% of the total funds.
Yeah. So California and New York can't get it all.
There you go.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Robbie, go ahead.
Well, I'm very excited about this program as well. I think on the federal level, it's possible that having a Secretary of Transportation that used to be a mayor might have played into sending the money directly to the cities. He understands what cities need and how funding can get hung up when it's distributed first to the states and that kind of thing. So I think that would be just a guess on my part, but that might be part of it. So I'm excited to see what we're going to do with it. And I'm really proud of the fact that Madison is in such a good position. I think we're in a good position to get the money, and we're in a good position to do good things with it. So thank you to staff and everybody else who worked on it. Thanks.
Yeah, it really is exciting, isn't it? And when you look at the Safe Streets Madison program that we have in place, you look at all the Vision Zero work that's been done, the Complete Streets work that's being done right now. It's all just really positioning us well to take advantage of something like this. Other comments or questions for staff? Okay, we'll need a motion to approve this. Darren?
I'm going to take advantage of the opportunity to make a motion to approve.
Okay, there's a motion. Bill, is that a second?
That's the second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Or Darren, did you want to speak to your motion at all?
No, thank you.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Apparently my dog wants to discuss it, but I can't tell what she's saying. All right, well, assume a unanimous consent vote, unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, the motion is carried, and we'll look forward to hearing about it. It's very exciting, and we can't wait to hear more about how this goes. And I know you're under a lot of time pressure with the deadline on all of these coming up. So thanks to staff for all of those efforts and in making sure that we take advantage of these great opportunities. So next we have item 5, the walking school bus program. And thanks for coming back and talking to us about this, Renee.
Sure, no problem. And I just, before I start my quick little presentation, I want to call out that I'm going to do the presentation, but Caitlin, who's here from the Wisconsin Bike Fed, and then Colleen, who is our city's pedestrian bicycle outreach specialist, she just started here in the middle of June, actually do most of the work. So I guess I'm going to take the credit by giving the presentation, but they're here for questions and things like that. So I will share my screen here. No. Oh, no, wrong. See, I'm having trouble here. Right. And here we go. I think we are set. Okay, so this came out, as some of you may remember, we were talking about crossing guards and the idea of walking school buses, and volunteers came up, and to kind of, they're not exactly the same thing. They're different things. Our crossing guards are obviously professional paid positions, got to come out every day. And the volunteers for the walking school bus, they're not necessarily having to do this every day. It is a commitment, though, that once they commit to, they need to show up. But I wanted to just go through it and let you all know a little bit more about it and a little bit more about our Safe Routes to School program. So first, for those of you who don't know about Safe Routes to School, probably a lot of you have heard about it over the years, but it's just, things to get more kids walking and biking to school, making it safer, easier, and adding kind of a fun element so that kids would also like to do it. And it includes a lot of things: engineering, education, encouragement, engaging with families and students, so lots of things. And the walking school buses kind of fill in that encouragement part. There's definitely a safety component to it as well, but also just a way to get kids excited about walking and make it easier for them to do that. And here we have a Dane County Safe Routes to School program. Caitlin, who's here from the Wisconsin Bike Fed, is the program manager for that. This also gets Transportation Alternative Program funds through that TAP program, and it goes to the Bike Fed to lead the program, but there is a close partnership with the school district, with the city, other community organizations. I mentioned the School Traffic Safety Committee as a part of the crossing guard presentation, and we all kind of work together through that group to move our programming forward. So basically, a walking school bus, it's kind of a funny name, but it's like a bus, a bunch of people, but they're walking instead of sitting on a yellow bus. Supervisors could be parents, volunteers, sometimes it's school staff. The routes and the days vary at each school. A lot of it is based on volunteers. And we do like to say this isn't childcare. This really is getting from school to home. There's not someone who's going to wait around for a parent. It's a particular route. It's like a school bus in that sense. However, for a lot of people who just can't walk with their children to school, or maybe they can't do it very regularly, it gives them kind of that peace of mind that the kids are getting there. It also has been very beneficial in getting kids to school on time and ensuring that they're there in time for breakfast. And obviously, there's a lot of research that shows that getting that physical activity, particularly before school, has a lot of benefits in just helping them learn better during the school day. It's also fun. If you've never been on a walking school bus, it's pretty fun. Lots of zaniness, particularly on the after school when they just get out. They're very hyped up. And, obviously, we all know the benefits of getting some exercise. It's also just a great way to model traffic safety, kind of reinforce that, and to teach kids to be more confident and independent in the long run. And obviously, less people driving to school really helps with traffic in the area of schools. It makes parents feel better about walking and biking to school, and it has benefits for air quality. So as mentioned, it's managed by the Wisconsin Bike Fed. You can see over here in this picture, some brightly colored Safe Routes to School umbrellas that the kids are carrying, because this is all weather, right? Like, we got to get out there. We're from Wisconsin. We can walk in any weather. And as I mentioned, lots of partners doing this. Obviously, the walking school buses, like so many things, were impacted by the pandemic, going to virtual school, just less people feeling comfortable volunteering, having to kind of reestablish everything. This is some kids pre-pandemic on their little walking school bus at Leopold in the winter, made some signs. Definitely, I've done some of the walking school buses at Leopold, and it is a very good time. During this, we also shifted the Healthy Kids Collaborative, a different nonprofit. We're managing it, and they're sort of kind of their work shifted a little bit, and the Wisconsin Bike Fed, who has always been a partner in this work, kind of took over the full running of the program. And a lot of our walking school buses pre-pandemic, there was a big focus on those community schools, and those were all having one at least once a week. But as I mentioned, volunteers since the pandemic, a little bit harder to recruit. Kind of the commitment is 1 to 2 days. More is great, but 1 to 2 is kind of typical during the school year. The walking school buses are, maybe 30 to 40 minutes of walking, depending on where it starts. And just obviously, if there are issues on walking school buses, the volunteers have the sort of the responsibility of reporting that into the program manager so that that can be addressed. So the ways that you can get involved, you can lead a route, you can recruit people to be route leaders. There's also opportunities to donate warm clothes, particularly gloves and mittens. The Wisconsin Bike Fed has some opportunities leading into the winter because not all the kids really are prepped with warm stuff for walking, unfortunately. Also, it's fun to give out some healthy snacks, a little prizes. There's some particular event days throughout the year. Also, you can just be a role model, do you like that, yourself, and use active transportation. I know you're all role models or feet models, maybe you're feet models. And Caitlin's email is here. For those of you who might be interested, people who see this to kind of get more involved in some aspect. And we have this WOW challenge, the Walk a Reel Challenge in October, kind of with an International Walk to School Day. We also have incentives to get schools involved and just a lot of encouraging them to make it a fun thing walking, and they can do things throughout that whole month just to really support this idea that walking and rolling to school is perfectly normal. It's a good thing and get more people thinking and trying it. We also have Bike and Roll to School Day. Also, that's in May. Just another way to get people biking to school. So different schools do different things. These are just a few of the things that Colleen did when she was at Whitehorse Middle School, when she was working there. Also, there's some bike trains that have been around periodically throughout the years, and it's like a walking school bus, but by bike. Not as common. It's definitely a little bit more logistically challenging. Takes a few more leaders, but is something that does happen in the city. And then we do have other school and youth education that I just wanted to mention. In-school education around walking and biking, after-school bike clubs, community center collaborations, bike camps like the Adventure Bike Camp. There's one going on today at Jefferson Middle School. We help with bike rodeos, community bike rides, and then just fix-it opportunities to make sure that kids' bikes are operational, since they sometimes take a little bit of a toll on their bikes. We like to have some opportunities to keep them going. So lots of great partnerships with other nonprofits for those activities. And then, as we mentioned today, the Safe Routes to School Planning, a grant that we have through TAP, will really help us just get more organized and find sort of the best things that we can do here in our local area to support walking and biking, including some individual school safety planning to lead to kind of finding the projects for Safe Streets Madison that we could fund that would make the most difference to walking and biking here in the city. So that also is a big collaboration between the city, the Bike Fed, and the school district. And it was just announced that it was selected officially for funding. So once we complete that resolution through the rounds, they will be able to get us an agreement to get that part done and then start that project later this year. So very exciting to kind of take Safe Routes to School to the next level. And just our contact information, but I'm gonna stop sharing because probably some of your questions will need to be answered by Caitlin or Colleen.
A very exciting program, and it fits very well with the crossing guard conversation that we had last time, which is why we asked that you come back. So comments or questions, and I think we originally talked about it from just a walking to school, but it's great to hear that riding to school is included in that as well, because we, not only do we have a lot of good connections for pedestrians, but also for bicyclists as well. So comments or questions for Renee or Colleen or Caitlin? Bill, go ahead.
Thanks, Ann. If you covered it, I missed it. I'm sorry. Is the program only for MMSD students, or are private schools, do they participate?
So they do. Caitlin, do you want to talk about your work with private schools?
Sure. So thank you. And also I thank you for presenting that. And I really cracked up with the feet model. So Dane County Safe Routes to School is for all students in Dane County. And then this specific program is a partnership, like Renee said, with MMSD in the city of Madison.
But if there are private schools, I mean, they can participate. A lot of our focus is on with really the support for walking school buses. A lot of it is with more of our lower income kind of schools. And so we would support them in starting one, but a lot of our staff time goes into the schools with greater need, just because there's not too many staff.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. And so we do have different ways that we support schools kind of on a tier system based on that need. Kind of how much are we in person on the ground versus maybe like just providing some incentives and some resources and being kind of that, I guess that resource.
So I guess, could I just follow up then? I guess, so are private schools made aware of the program just by outreach, just with materials and then recognizing that if they're interested, they're probably going to have to do the staffing and so forth themselves rather than help from you folks and trying to reach out to get the volunteers. The private schools could, they generally have a volunteer network that's probably, a little bit more sophisticated than some of the public schools.
Yeah, so definitely.
I'm just guessing.
Yeah, we definitely have outreach to them. And I will say our Walker Wheel Challenge, some of our highest performing schools are sometimes private schools. And they do have part of that is they do have a very strong volunteer base often built into the school model. So I've definitely seen private schools have the most activities and people participating in some of our events. So
they can receive the materials.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Thanks.
Denise, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that my question's already been answered. I was curious if you were targeting some of our, sorry, my screen reader is chattering. So I was checking to see, it sounds like you do your first tier with lower income schools. And I was just curious kind of what percentage of MMSD schools, especially some of those community schools, are participating?
Yeah, sure. So our community schools is really where MMSD asked us to start with this program. So all of those are participating. Excellent. Yeah.
Awesome.
Is that all you had then, Denise? Okay. Other comments or questions? One of the reasons that we asked this to come back was we were terminating crossing guards at certain locations. And it's unfortunate that Alder Miyadzi is not here this evening because he asked, we talked about the walking school bus program, and I think he saw that program could perhaps help in those locations where the crossing guards were no longer going to be located. And I heard him asking how alders could help in terms of generating volunteers. And I think we could certainly take that a step further, because all of the people who are on this commission have connections with groups of people who could certainly have interested parties who could, maybe help find some volunteers if they can connect up appropriately with Caitlin or Colleen or however that would work. So maybe you could talk about that, because, alders would certainly be an interesting way to look when you have locations that are critical, Renee, that, where there's a need, and the alders, might be a good way to try and find those volunteers. But we also have lots of good resources here and other places as well. So I guess getting the word out is what I'm asking about, and how one would go about using those resources.
Sure. And I would leave it a little bit to Caitlin, who actually has to do the work. But I think, as we're rebuilding this program post-pandemic, there's definitely some opportunities. We do that with like our crossing guard postings. We'll reach out to the alders who might, be able to publicize it in their districts where people would most likely want to work. And I think there's some opportunities where we can do the same with our walking school buses. Obviously, we'd like to get the word out, that there's some schools who do walking school buses, then get a little bit of training, and then they just roll with it within their PTO organizations, the ones that have really strong PTOs. And then there are others, right, where we recruit a little bit more heavily, just for people who are interested in the idea of walking and have some time that they're willing to commit. And those are the ones where I think, people who are willing to share that out, it's super helpful to get the word out, because there are a lot of people who are passionate about, walking and would enjoy doing it with a group of kids.
Exactly. Yeah. Alder Harrington McKinney, go ahead.
Thank you very much. And I must say that Alder Miyadzi is celebrating with his son's graduation, and he wanted to go to Hawaii. So his son are in Hawaii, and he asked his son, "Where would you like to go?" And his son said, "I want to go to Hawaii, Dad." And so that's why he's not here.
I see.
But my question is that at this point, have you identified those areas where there is a need for some pepped up volunteers or publications, announcement, and assistance in getting more volunteers at this point? Any identified specific problem? I won't say problem areas, but areas that need some beefing up.
Sure, I'll let Caitlin take that.
Yeah, thank you. So I think just getting the general knowledge out first about the walking school bus to the school population has been a work, kind of a project in itself. And then right now it's almost like we had volunteers ready to go, and then the school population wasn't quite ready to take that on. So kind of just matching that. But right now, just looking at focusing on the community schools, that's really where we need to get the word out more about. That's kind of where the most need is, I've found.
So would going to the alders in the districts where those community schools are located be a helpful idea? Do you think?
I think that would be really helpful. I think that would be great to get the word out about it. Mm-hmm.
Well, Alder Harrington McKinney would, I mean, just sending this deck work, or how could they best connect with those alders? What do you think? Or maybe Renee, maybe you could connect, separately with Alder Harrington McKinney and Alder Miazzi, and or Caitlin, you could to see how you could hook them up. Because I mean, Alder, I don't know how much material you get to read, but it's got to be mind-blowing. So
one of the things I wanted to add, and as you said, all of us have connections in our various walks of life. So I think that that's important. I'm not speaking for the other commissions, but each alder, we have access to a blog that goes out widely. And if we could, have a compressed announcement or something that we all can share, the 20 alders have a choice of whether they want to share it or not. But that's why I was asking, was there a particular area that you're looking at? And you mentioned the community schools, and so that would help. And so my ask would be just a general either flyer announcement or something like that we could post out to our various, and not just alders, but that commissioners could also post out or share out if they choose to do that as well.
Mm-hmm. So what you're suggesting, Alder, is that the this flyer or someplace that's posted so you could send a link would be made available to the alders and also to the TC members. So
absolutely, because I printed off the document, and so having a link where people can go and access additional information, sign up, or how to would be very beneficial. And the more widely that is circulated, I think you will draw the volunteers that you're looking for.
Yeah, but Alder, I totally agree with your comment about a compressed announcement. So having something that's like sound bites of information that would catch people's attention, and then a link to the presentation and those kinds of things, because in today's world, people read in sound bites, don't you think? Yeah. Caitlin, does that sound like a?
Yeah, I think that sounds like a really good idea. And really just to kind of gather those names, and I'd be happy to talk with each one of those volunteers via email or over the phone, just so that they know as well that each school does have its own needs. And so we really want to work the walking school bus in a way that fits those schools' needs in that community, depending on where they're walking from.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Bill, go ahead.
Thanks. Caitlin, I think maybe there are some very good neighborhood associations in the city, and they should be on your distribution list of sharing this information, because some of those neighborhoods have some pretty nice newsletters, getting that information in to their hands so they can distribute it to their neighborhoods. That might be beneficial too. It's just another way to get the word out.
Thank you. Yeah,
this is a great program. Speaking as a person who loves to walk, it's appealing, as you said, Renee, not only to the kids, but to the volunteers who are doing the walking or the riding with them. So it really benefits everybody. So it's a very attractive program. And it's not just here in Madison. I mean, I first heard about it on the national news. So it's something that is getting a lot of publicity and is very popular in a lot of different places. So, but the pandemic did, have a negative impact on those locations as well. So other comments or questions? Great program, some good ideas about ways to promote it and hopefully make those connections. So Caitlin, you can work with Renee if you want to, in terms of getting messages to TC members, and certainly to alders and or however you all want to work that out. And a great suggestion, Bill, to use the neighborhood associations. Any other suggestions about connections for her?
Next door.
Okay.
That's an excellent vehicle
Yep.
for getting information disseminated.
Yep. Good suggestion. Excellent. Robbie, go ahead.
Well, I know that the city actually has a list of neighborhood associations and contacts. Some are more up to date than others, but I know that the president of my neighborhood association regularly sends out announcements that she's received from the city. So certainly I think it's in the planning department, but Renee can help you with that. But anyway, you don't have to find the list of neighborhood associations. The city has it. So
yeah, excellent. And would working with the neighborhood resource teams, Renee, would that be another option with Tarek and that group?
I would say that they are a lifesaver for some of our work. Actually, they're pretty plugged into our community schools work, and some of our neighborhood resource team members are some of our volunteers over the years for walking school buses, actually, because they're very invested in the neighborhood and enjoy the opportunity to do that too. So they have been great. Just a plug for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's sounds like they're already there, Renee. So we don't have to go that route. Okay, other comments or questions? Excellent ideas. And anything else, Renee? Can they just shoot you an email?
For sure. Definitely shoot me an email. And once we get the TAP project rolling, I think we'll be back to give an update on kind of where that work is going and talk about it more, because I think this is just a great opportunity to really, grow our program beyond what it was before the pandemic and really just find the best way forward in the new world.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, thanks. Other comments or questions? We'll look forward to hearing more about it. Okay. Next on the agenda is our updates from the Transportation Policy and Planning Board. Chris and Alder Harrington McKinney.
I'm going to yield to my senior statesman, Chris.
No problem. Yeah, there were a couple things that might interest folks at the last TPP meeting. One was a discussion of speeding and etiquette on the bike paths that Renee presented. So if anyone is interested in hearing about some of those issues, that's there. TPP decided against any more formal regulation of the paths, but sort of nudged the city to think about messaging and education. Bridget, did you want to ask a question about that or something?
Yeah, I just had a quick question, if you can hear me. Sorry. So on that, it's like it was quite a discussion, and I'm wondering, are the yellow and black signs that are out on some of the paths now a result of that, or was that something that was previously planned?
No, those were out before, but Renee presented those and some other concepts I think that they're working on. Yep.
And Chris,
so,
can I just throw something in there, Chris? One of the things that people had been interested in hearing about was e-bikes and scooters, and there was a big discussion about that as well, was there not? As part of this whole speed issue?
There was, yep. I think the conclusion of the board was that speeding itself was probably not necessarily a problem at this point, but more like just inappropriate behaviors when the path gets really busy. So much harder to regulate than I think speed.
Yeah. So if anybody needs a link to the agenda, Aiden can send it to you, but that item 4 that Chris is just talking about, it has a lot of great information in that presentation, and the discussion was very, very interesting and very relevant to a lot of the things that we talk about here at TC, I thought, Chris, in terms of when we're making decisions about what a path should look like. And, I think it really would be relevant, don't you?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And education was brought up repeatedly rather than ticketing, signage, but really education was paramount in the discussion as well. So it was a very lively and very interesting conversation. And so I wanted to add that in as well.
Another item that probably folks would be interested in is if you didn't know, the city is moving or planning to move towards a new framework for local planning, neighborhood planning, and area planning. So rather than neighborhood plans being developed sort of ad hoc over time, there would be a handful of predefined districts, and plans would be updated every 10 years, sort of consistently. So I think, as you probably know, when we're discussing transportation projects, we're sometimes looking towards those plans that might be very old, or I think sometimes some of the plans overlap and probably don't necessarily agree with each other. So last thing is the city presented some new health and safety goals that it's planning on working into the Imagine Madison update, the comp plan update, that were relevant for transportation.
Comments or questions for Chris or Alder Harrington McKinney? Okay, thanks. Yeah, that was a lot of good things, a lot of interesting discussions at that last meeting. Any other comments on that item? Okay, next, announcements from the chair. And actually, I don't have any tonight, so that'll be quick. In terms of future agenda items, you saw it posted in Legistar. Are there any future agenda items that are not showing on there that you would like to add for us to consider that aren't in our work plan or on this list already? Seeing no hands. Okay, we had a late addition, the Metro Transit Annual Financial Statement Audit Report. Jody Dobson's here from Baker Tilly. Justin and Jennifer are here from Metro Transit. So Justin, did you want to make any comments, or do you want Jody to just go ahead?
No, just thanks for your flexibility in fitting us in, and that I just hand it over to Jody, unless Jennifer has anything to say.
Nope, I'm fine to go ahead with Jody. Thank you.
Well, Jody's an old pro at coming to talk with us, so welcome back, Jody.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share the slide deck. Hopefully this works as I get everything rearranged. So thank you very much for having me here tonight. I just want to walk through an overview of the audit, as well as our required communications at the end of the audit process, and then answer any questions that you might have. So the audit team this year, I serve as the partner in charge of the engagement, and Megan Cahill has been the manager of the audit for the last several years, working really to oversee the day-to-day operations, our team, and all communications with your team. And then we also have a concurring reviewer. This year that was Ryan O'Donnell. What that is within our process is a secondary person that's not involved in the day-to-day of the audit, reviewing the financial statement to ensure that everything there is not only meeting the requirements and the standards of the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, but is written in a way that's clear and understandable to someone who hasn't been in the nuts and bolts, if you will. So as we start the audit process, one of the first things we do is assess the internal controls of the various processes within your organization. These are, established to make sure that you are meeting your operational needs, your reporting needs, and compliance. But we're looking at the key transaction cycles and balances to understand how that information is gathered and processed, because it helps us to design our audit processes. Ultimately, we need to design tests to obtain enough evidence to issue our audit opinion. So as a result of the audit this year, the financial statements received what we call a clean or an unmodified opinion. That's the highest level of assurance that we can provide on the financial statements. So letting you and any outside readers know that these are a fair presentation in all material respects of the financial position and results of operations for Metro. The financial statements are the responsibility of management. All of the information in the statements comes from your team and your records. Management does also provide the management discussion and analysis towards the beginning of the report. This is really intended to be a plain English summary of what happened during the year and the impacts. It provides a lot of good information and takes out some of the accounting jargon that's included in the rest of the report. And then in addition to the financial statements, we coordinate with the City of Madison audit team here in our office on the annual single audit, which is required because of the receipt of federal and state funding. So we're testing the grants that come directly to Metro, and the conclusion was that those were all complied with in all material respects. So there were no findings there. Just a couple slides here on financial highlights. As we look at the revenue mix for Metro over the last 5 years, we see that the mix percentage-wise is more in line with pre-2020. 2020 had a significant increase in the federal funding due to some of the COVID grants that were flowing through there. So the 2021 amount of federal funding was down closer to prior levels. And the state subsidy was up a little bit. And then of course, the balance there coming in from the local funding. But overall revenues were decreased a little bit in 2021. And then looking at the expense mix, these have stayed relatively stable over the last 5 years, with salaries and benefits being the largest portion of expenses, followed by contract services. And this is really consistent with other transit organizations that we work with, that it is a very labor intensive program to run. So as I look at the required communications, as I said, our responsibility under generally accepted auditing standards is really to design the test based on our understanding of your processes and controls in order to obtain evidence to issue our audit opinion. So that testing can include things like confirmation of balances or receivables, testing transactions to supporting details of invoices or payroll records, performing analytic reviews of year-over-year trends and those kind of things. There were no changes to the planned scope and timing of the audit from what we intended as we started the process. We do understand that all financial statements include accounting estimates, things like pension liabilities, OPEB liabilities, depreciation expense. So our approach to accounting estimates is to make sure that the processes or methodologies used in calculating those are consistent, compliant with the accounting standards, and that the key inputs going into those estimates are well supported and reasonable. No concerns identified with the accounting estimate. Just to note that if the financial statements are included in some future documents, our responsibility does not extend to those documents without a separate engagement. As far as accounting policies, there were no changes to accounting policies in the 2021 financial statements. Does not happen often that we don't have any new accounting standards to implement, and we will have some for 2022 and 2023 that we will be working with management on. As part of the process of looking at the statements, we look at the financial statement disclosures to make sure that they are clear and compliant. And then if we had any difficulties, any uncorrected or corrected misstatements or audit adjustments, any disagreements, or we're aware of any consultations or concerns, we would report those to you. This is where I can say I'm happy to report. I have nothing to report for those items. We ensure that we maintain a relationship such that we are independent and can issue our audit opinion. And we also receive a letter from management at the end of the process. That's a representation that they've provided us access to the records, answered questions, provided us the minutes from your meetings, and anything else. And we don't have any other audit findings or issues to report. So with that, I do want to thank staff for all their time. I know we asked for a lot of information during the audit process. I think things went relatively well this year as we were kind of transitioning back from COVID environment into a hybrid environment. And each audit we've worked on this year is asked for things a little bit differently. So we're learning that process, but glad to be able to be flexible and meet everyone's individual needs. So, but with that, I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Jody. All good to not have anything negative that you need to report. Yes. And always a lot of work. I was a commercial credit officer and looked at tons of financial statements, and it's great to see clean opinions and things going so well. Comments or questions from people for Jody or for Justin or Jennifer? I'm seeing no hands. We will need a motion to accept the report. Bill?
I'll make a motion for acceptance of the audit report.
Thank you. Robbie, is that a second?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Alder Harrington McKinney, was that also a second?
Yes, I'm going to ask permission to go back to the policy and planning report. There was something significantly discussed that I did not bring up. So with the permission of the chair, if I could just go back and share that after this motion carries.
Sure, no problem. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, we'll assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing no hands, the motion is carried. And thanks so much for coming, Jody, and we appreciate it. And we'll look, and I read every page that you sent me, just so you know. So thanks so much. Alder, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things that was widely discussed is the addition of health and safety. And I would invite people to go back and look at those elements, and specifically the elements of a great city and the Imagine Madison goals and strategies. And one of the things that was widely discussed was performance excellence. And in looking at performance excellence, the addition of health and safety is huge. And I would encourage commissioners to go back and to review those documents, because when we're looking at equity, when we're looking at diversity, there are so many elements that we can overlook, but this kind of adds this to what is a great city, what is a thriving city, and a thriving city for all. And that was one of the discussions, you know, whether, and we look at diversity in terms of a Black or white issue, but it's not. And Denise always reminds us it's differently abled as well. So expanding that is so huge for us to look at. I would invite individuals to really go back and look at that addition of health and safety as one of the elements of what a great city looks like. So that was the piece that I wanted to really talk about, and some as an added discussion on one of the future agenda items. Let's look at that item of what is health and safety. So that's why I wanted to bring it back. I wanted to add it to one of the future agenda items.
Do you think it could fall under the practices of equity and inclusion? Alder?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Because I'm working on with Tarek on some of the next steps in that regard. So I'll add that incorporating health and safety into that. what I'm wondering, Aiden, why don't you go ahead and send a link to the July 18th Transportation Policy and Planning Board agenda to everybody? Because in addition, there was a director's report that gives a nice summary from Tom Lynch about where we are with regard to all things transportation in the city. And there are so many things that were discussed this evening that are pretty important. So, Aiden, if you just, I know people have seen it already, but if you could just, for their convenience, send a link out to that agenda again, then people will have it handy and they can look at those various things that we were just talking about. All sorts of things that really impact us in our work on TC. So other comments on that? Just making a note, Alder, on that for future agenda. Okay, so that brings us to a motion to adjourn. And as usual, great conversations and everything this evening, so much appreciated. Is there a motion to adjourn? Robbie?
Move adjournment.
And Darren? Second? Okay, there's a motion and a second, so
yes, second.
Okay, thank you. We'll assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody chooses to vote no or abstain, which I would guess not. Thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate it. Take care.
Good night.
Night.